Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast. It's more of season 10. Who's excited? I'm excited. I feel like I'm yelling, but who knows? Because I'm still congested and I can't hear myself. Anyway, all that fun news aside, it's season 10. It's interview day. We have like one of the coolest people I've never met in real life on today. I'm very excited to talk to her and to bring you some of her knowledge and experience in a how-to episode. Before we do that, let me say hello to my amazing co-host Tova. Both of us are still sick, so bear with us, but we are working through it. And how are you today, Tova? What's happening?
I got the strep throat, but it's better than the first day. So we're going. I don't know if it's better than yesterday. I think it is. I don't know.
You sound better. You sound better to me today than you did when we were talking yesterday.
I think so. So
that's good.
But I'm excited. And in what how many years has it been since I went to law school? Like I still get excited that I have friends who like have to go to court,
yeah.
which is which is silly because we have lots of lawyer friends. But our friend who we are introducing momentarily has to go to court soon, so we need to get this podcast in.
Yeah, we're getting the show on the road. Why don't I go ahead and introduce our guest, and then Tova, you'll take over. But you guys know we're talking about how to live your limitless life. And I specifically say your because it's really about what that means for you as an individual. We all have a unique journey. And today we are talking to someone that both of us have sort of virtually met, but not met in real life. But I'm super excited to introduce her. She is a lawyer mom, and she's going to talk to you guys today a little bit about her personal journey, but also about how to negotiate, which is a skill that we all really need to have and to figure out for ourselves. So without further ado, let me introduce Chelsea Caldwell to the show. Chelsea was born in Vancouver and spent her childhood stuck in the branches of various trees, wandering the beaches, or running mildly wild. I can very much relate to all of that. Chelsea began her university career in the School of Music at the University of Victoria and switched to medieval history, light topic, and that led her to a Master of Arts degree specializing in legal history. Much to the relief of her parents, according to her, Chelsea then made a hard turn off the road to a PhD and entered UBC Law School, now known as Allard. Chelsea graduated in 2002, began articles with a downtown boutique firm, and entered a partnership upon being called to the bar on July 1st, 2003. It was, according to the Caldwell family, the best Canada Day ever. Since 2002, Chelsea has been dedicated to working for her clients with other lawyers. She considers the title of counsel the truest expression of a lawyer's job, to advise clients and then carry out the best possible plan. Chelsea loves litigation. Her goal at every hearing is to serve her clients and the court by providing clear, reasonable arguments and being happiest on her feet before an adjudicator. And there is so much more to Chelsea that I can't fit in all of that bio intro, but we're going to get into all of that stuff right now. So Chelsea, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you with us.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a fantastic opportunity to talk about what I love doing and also to see exactly how hard I went with my eye makeup this morning because I'm going to a disco.
I love it. I think it's great.
Well, I mean, and let's be clear. We were like, do we ask Chelsea to come on to talk to us about makeup, or do we ask Chelsea to come on to talk to us about negotiating?
There were many options, to be honest.
Either one. We're like, we just need to have Chelsea on. We don't care why she comes on.
It's true. really flattering and so fun. I am fascinated by negotiation, and it's interesting that we're talking about it today. This morning, I was texting with one of the mediators that I use a lot, and I've commented to her on a number of occasions, I don't really think that I'm the greatest negotiator. And she says, no, you are. You just have your own style. And it's very interesting to me to consider negotiation both in the personal realm and in the professional realm, because I think that I am negotiating from the minute that I get up in the morning till the minute that my kid goes to bed.
Yep.
And then I have about 3 hours where I'm not in active negotiation with someone, and I fall asleep, and then I wake up the next morning and I start negotiating with myself.
Yes.
About getting out of bed. So that's where I start from. I think one of the most important things that I've noticed over the past 21 odd years of watching people negotiate with me, watching myself negotiating with clients, negotiating in my personal life, is that you have to pick your battles. I think a lot of people, especially after the last 3 years or so, are incredibly reactive. And so a lot of the time, what I will see is people will fall into a black and white perspective incredibly quickly without thinking about whether the fight is even worth having. And I think that the place that you have to start with negotiation is, okay, what is the fight that I'm having? What's the dispute here? And also, what are my goals? People frequently forget about goals in negotiation. So the place that I start in every professional negotiation is, of course, by talking to my client and saying, this is what you can expect the law to do for you. What are your wishes? What would you have happen in a perfect world? So when that person says to me, I would like a unicorn, I can say to them, well, I would also like some kind of pony, preferably without a head knife, but you do. That may not be something that's achievable in this situation. So what's your fallback position here? What is the thing that we really need to get you? And then is there anything that we can get on top of that? Let's get the bread and butter, but is there any jam that we can put on top of it? And in the course of having that conversation, what I usually do is identify my client's priorities. And this is something, as I'm sure both of you know, that comes from kind of really sitting down and talking to somebody whom you're negotiating for or whom you're negotiating with, and figuring out what their priorities are. And one of the things that I will frequently do with my clients is I will sit down and say to them, listening to what you're telling me, my understanding of you is that these are your priorities. Is it predictability? Is it maximizing your claim? What is it that is most important to you? And if somebody says to me, well, I'm extremely risk tolerant, I want to maximize my claim, I'm happy to go to court, I trust your advice, well, then that puts us on a very different foundation than somebody who says to me, I really hate the idea of this, I don't ever want to go to court, I don't even like being in the same room with the people that I'm negotiating with on this. So, I don't think that you have the bullets in your gun that you might have with another client. So that's where I start from. And I also start that way in my private life. The classic example, sorry, break in. I could talk for hours.
Well, no. So that was my question, because I like negotiating, and I don't necessarily have your skill set, but I like it when I'm doing it for other people. I like it when I can figure out, when I know what the clear objective is, when I know, and when you're doing it, even if you're doing it for yourself, but you're on behalf of a larger organization or a larger group, but you're part of that group. To me, it's very clear, okay, here are our goals. And then suddenly when I'm doing it for myself in personal life, it all becomes very muddy. So how do you do it? How do you take your skills and then transfer it when it's you, and your emotions and your feelings and your passions are actually affecting the way that you're like, I know how to negotiate, but now I'm not only the person who is guiding the negotiation, I am the person being guided, because I'm the whole package here.
Okay, so I think where I start from for myself is really with like what is the fight here and what is motivating me. One of my absolute favorite colleagues and a mentor of mine, early in my career when I would write huge long screeds, accusing opposing counsel of everything under the sun, reminding them of the law, throwing case law at them, he looked at me one day and he said, like your technical work is good. It's, you're doing all the right things, but what's the purpose of your communication? So I think I start every negotiation in my private life, whether it's with my kid, whether it's with my husband, whether it's with my parents. And I think, okay, well, first of all, what is my goal? What is the goal of my communication with this person? Is it to get them to do what I want? Frequently with my child, it's a case of, okay, how can I motivate you to do the basic things that are going to make me not be insane by 8:30 in the morning? With my spouse, it's frequently something like, I don't think that we should rip apart this room at this particular point in time. It's going to be disruptive for me. With my parents, it could be, I really don't want you going up on ladders anymore. Dad, you're 80 years old. Stop it. And then what I do is I think about how does this person communicate best? So what I've learned in terms of negotiating with my spouse, he hates negotiating with me face to face. He's described me as an oncoming train that will not stop, a badger with flat black eyes, an absolutely unreasonable person to deal with. And so what I did with him over the first, I would say 3-4 years of our marriage, and we are very happily married, partially because we're good at communicating and negotiating, is that he hates that face to face. The emotion of it really, really bothers him. So the way I negotiate with him is I will write him an email. And I will text him and I will say, I wrote you an email. It can wait until end of day. And when I'm with my kid, I sort of look at him and suss him out and go, okay, what's the bandwidth that he's working with? And that of course is a very different style of negotiation, because ultimately if things go absolutely belly up, I'm just going to pick him up and do what we need to do.
Right.
But I think there's a lot to be said for sitting down with yourself first and having the dialogue and saying, what is it about this situation that is so bothersome? And sometimes it's incredibly clear. And I'm flashing back here to my divorce. And sometimes it is really more amorphous. Like, I need more recognition for the things that I'm doing for my family, and I'm happy to do them, but I need that recognition or I'm going to lose my mind. And then what I do is I figure out, okay, I know who I'm dealing with. I know what's important to me. And the thing that I have to control in myself is negotiating against myself before I even get to the other person. And I think that's something that, and this is a very broad generalization. Whenever I make a generalization, it's very broad. I've noticed that a lot of my female clients tend to attack themselves more than the other side will attack them. There's an innate fear that their position is unreasonable, that they cannot ask for what they want. So I try to work that before I even start. And then I pick my time. Sometimes you have to be a little bit tired before you start trying to reach an agreement. Sometimes the other person has to be a little bit tired before you can reach an agreement. So that's where I start from. I try not to go into it purely emotionally. If I'm feeling extremely emotional, it's better for me to just cry, rage, sit in the car and scream loudly, whatever it is that it takes to get me down to a point where I can talk to myself and then go forward and advance my position.
So there is an enormous amount of advice and information packed into everything you just said. And I want to unpack it a little bit, but I first am going to drag you back to where it all started. And what I'd like to understand, I would like for our listeners to start to understand is this a skill that you were born having? Was it something valued in your family life? This sort of ability to step back objectively and think things through before, like you said originally, people are very reactive and they've always been very reactive. And generally, and I'm going to make a big broad generalization, people struggle to understand that they're responsible for their own feelings. And so, all of that combined, everything you said is amazing. How did you get there? Like, where did that start?
Oh, well, my family is, and I'm incredibly grateful for the privilege that I have. And when I was getting ready today, I was thinking about, I have to acknowledge I have a ton of privilege. I'm white. My parents are university educated. My family's not wealthy by any means, but I've led a very comfortable life. That's not to say that I haven't had personal struggles during that time. Because of that degree of comfort, and because my parents are a librarian and a dentist, there was a great degree, and they're the first in their family to go to university. They were the first in their family. There was a great degree of importance placed on education and the ability to express yourself. And however that came down the pipe, my parents were always ready to pull me back, and my mother in particular, the sainted Judy Caldwell, was very good at saying to me, what you're doing here is not presenting a clear argument to me for me to consider. So yes, it does come from an early age, and it was very valued. And even if my parents wouldn't agree with me, they would always acknowledge what I had done. Like, yeah, you presented a really interesting argument there. And there were certainly times during my life where I could see that they were just so exhausted that I could get what I want. So yeah, it was valued from an early age. I was also, I was a bit of a lump during school. I did not enjoy high school. I quite enjoyed university until I got to law school, and then I was just really sick of being in university. But there's that natural competitiveness that makes you want to win. And what practicing law taught me is that it's not about the win, it's about achieving your goal. If you're forced into a fight, yeah, you want to win that fight. But if there's a way to negotiate before you get to that fight, it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of energy. So that's sort of where I got to where I am. And then when I had a child, I realized, oh my God, I'm going to spend the rest of my natural born life, hopefully, negotiating with someone who owns my heart completely. Yeah. And that really caused me to shift and come back to, okay, I have to pull away from the emotion, especially with my child, because that's actually going to lead me astray, because I have to think way down the road. So that's sort of a weird squiggly arc to where I got to where I am.
I think it's one of those things where, well, for me anyway, so I stopped practicing law before I had kids. And I was like, I can't deal with arguing all the time. Like, I just can't keep arguing. I'm exhausted. There were a lot of reasons I left the law, but like one of them was I was just sick and tired of arguing about everything every day, all day long. And then I had kids and I was like, oh no, it's back. Like all argument all the time. And I have one very confrontational child who is like every aspect of the day is an argument. But what you're saying, I think, for our listeners is imperative. And it's the idea that you don't have to argue everything, despite my child's best efforts. Mm-hmm. And you can take positions, and I hate even saying that because it already makes it seem confrontational, but you can take a position that is open, and you can take a position that allows you to be more adaptable and allows you to grow and allows the people around you to grow and adapt. And I think that doing more of that, as like becoming a parent, really like forced me to figure that out, which I did not. I was way more confrontational. I'm going to win at all costs before. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit more about like, how do you take your personal and your work life, and how do you manage separating those things so that you're not bringing, like, if you're having a confrontational day at work, because you're a lawyer, I mean, like, you're a lawyer, you're going to have days where somebody's yelling at you and like somebody's doing something and you're just like, I want to kill this person. How are you separating those things out for yourself when you're at home? How are you not bringing that sort of reactiveness with you?
I think the first thing I do is acknowledge it. A lot of the time before I even get home, I will call my spouse and say, hey, this is the day that I had. And if there's something that I think that he can reasonably do to make my life easier, I will ask him to do it. And he's a guy with a strong sense of self-preservation, so he's probably going to do it. Yeah. With. And then when I come in, one of the things that I started doing with my kid really early was saying, "How was your day?" And so it's quite normal for him to say, "How was your day, mommy?" And I'll say, "It was really hard. These are the things that went on." So I think the key to that for me is letting some of it out before I'm physically in the presence of the people that I'm going to be dealing with, is just taking that. And it sounds so cliche, but taking 5 minutes to just not deal with anything except myself. And if somebody says to me, like, if I go home, and I know you both had this experience, you walk in the house and everything comes at you, two dogs, kid, husband, the mess of the day. Sometimes I'll just walk away from it and go into my bedroom, and say, yeah, I'll be out in a few moments, and give myself the space to come down, because I'm very aware that I am a bit of a firecracker and I need that space. So that's where I start from, separating the two. And then a lot of the time what I will do, and this comes back to communication being at the heart of negotiating, I will say to my spouse, my kids, my parents, whoever, look, this is what I'm really concerned about. I will start with my concern rather than their actions. And that helps a lot, because you're not in an accusatory place then. You're saying, this is what I'm feeling. And I think this is where it's coming from. How do you feel about that? So that's the way that I negotiate in my personal life.
So we need to take a quick break, or we're just never going to have time to take any breaks. But I do want to come back and just highlight a couple things that you just said. So we will take a quick break and then we will be right back.
Well, hello there, ladies. Are you ready to elevate your life and connect with like-minded souls? Join us every week at the Go Boldly Together weekly Women's Circle, where strength meets sisterhood. Dive into empowering discussions, share your victories, and navigate challenges together. Our circle is a safe space for growth and inspiration. Experience the power of collective wisdom and unleash your full potential. Don't miss out on the transformative energy. Click the link in our show notes or visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/Women's Weekly Group to learn more about our Go Boldly Circle today. Together, let's embrace the journey of personal development, and let's celebrate that unstoppable force within each of us.
Okay. All right. Welcome back, everybody. So there's two things I want to highlight. And one is when you've sort of, I don't want to say trained, but you've taught your son that an appropriate way to greet somebody is say, how was your day? You also taught him and yourself that it is okay to actually give a real answer. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's a big deal, because I think a lot of times, especially as moms, I have to be careful, because my middle son does often ask me, like, what did you do? How was your day? What did you do? And I have to be careful not to ignore the questions to get to how was your, because I want to know how his day was, because he does want to know how my day, he genuinely knows what I did today. And I think that it is really important, both for what you said, so that kind of he knows what he's dealing with, but also so you get an opportunity to share with your family, it's been a rough day. Mm-hmm. But also so he knows that questions like, how are you? And questions like, how was your day? Are not supposed to be answered with fine, good, but can actually be real answers.
Yes. And I think, that is something that I hope most lawyers understand, although 21 years experience has taught me that maybe they don't. That's also the first question I generally ask somebody when I'm speaking to them in a professional context is, how are you doing? And if they say, oh, I'm fine, I will wait until they sit down, and then I'll say, yeah, but how are you really doing? I'm not asking to be polite. I genuinely want to know, because I think, I suspect that both of you have had this experience where you're like, somebody asked me how I was doing and I told them, and now I can never speak to them again.
It's usually in a coffee line for me, by the way, and it's a stranger where I'm like, let me just tell you.
There's a lot of strangers out there who have seen me very big-eyed and not ready to do life. So I think you're right. I think you've pinpointed that really well. And the key to any successful negotiation is knowing where everybody's coming from, and knowing what they need in order to make a decision or respond to you. So I might come into the house and be a little full. Maybe I've had a really great day and my husband hasn't, and I come in like one of the other things he said is like a Disney sidekick, like a little yattering donkey. And I'm just, blah, 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 blah. And he will turn to me and say, I can't. So the other side of negotiation for me is, okay, maybe this isn't going to go on my schedule. Maybe the best thing I can do for this negotiation right now is back off. And that is something that, maybe there's people out there who are more reticent than I am. But it's very important to pick your time and place. I'm not going to come at my husband about his decision to rip apart a bathroom when he's had the world's worst day at work. I'm going to wait until he's had a glass of wine, until he's in a chiller place, or maybe we just table it to the weekend, and we'll talk about it then, and that's fine. And I think also especially to come back to personal relationships, one of the best things that you can do is establish that there are going to be some times where you are not going to be able to engage in this process. And there's going to be times where you have to make a snap decision, and we're going to have to respect each other on that. And so we will literally I'll have a moment where I'll say to my husband, I don't have time to be nice about this. This is what needs to happen. But I don't do that very often. And maybe that's just because my kid no longer falls downstairs quite as much. It really helps. I find it really helps.
Yeah. Let's take a little bit of a turn and talk some more about like your journey and how you got to, I read your bio to everyone. Mm-hmm. You have a broad range of experience and interests, obviously. Not that you shouldn't. Believe me, we all do. But I'm curious to know how you went from like the School of Music to medieval history to law. They do in my head all make sense together, but I'm sure other people are like, wait a minute, what? So tell us a little about that.
That's a really good question. So I may have mentioned that I was a bit of a lump until university. I did not like high school. I had the worst attendance record in my high school's history. All I did was make out with my boyfriends and fail math tests. But nice. I did very well, and I was a good singer. And music was the thing that I consistently did throughout my life without ever feeling anything negative about it. I just loved it. And so the best way for me to get into university was to a school of music. I had good performance chops. I had an excellent voice teacher whom, Phyllis Mailing, rest in peace, was the most fantastic influence in my life. And so that's how I got into university. And once I was there, I realized that there was not a lot of space for who I wanted to be. And that's of course in retrospect. At the moment that things were going on, I just kind of felt like, wow, this is not fun anymore. The thing that I loved most of all has turned into a job, and I'm looking at this as a job, and I'm realizing this is not how I want to live my life. Musicians work endlessly hard hours, face ongoing rejection. There's physical issues with the different kinds of disciplines within music, and ultimately I found myself very unhappy. So I did two things. Number one, I went and I put myself in a medieval studies course just to see what it was like. And the other thing that I did was I sat down with my old music teacher and I said, these are the feelings that I'm having. And she said, well, that's ridiculous. This is not who you are. Maybe you need to try something different. So I switched into academics, and then I went and I found a private music teacher, and I kept doing music on the side, always loved it, did little bits of performance for weddings, churches, whatever. But the thing I really loved most about music was working in duet or in ensemble. And I realized that I wanted a job which was more people-based than solo performance-based. So when I went into academics, I loved it. Medieval history is fascinating. It is so weird and gross and exciting.
Yes.
And
Love it.
What fascinated me most about it, though, was the law. And over the years of being a lawyer, I've come to realize that the reason I am so attracted to the law is because it provides pretty solid guidelines for what your basic societal obligations and expectations are. So a lot of the time people will come to me and they'll say something like, oh, you know, this person behaved horribly. Isn't that terrible? And I will say, well, it's not illegal. It's upsetting to you for sure. But it's not illegal. So, you know, you can look at this and say, all right, there's a personal aspect to this that I find upsetting, but that's because of who I am as a person. It's not actionable, and it sort of allows you to separate the personal from the, you know, the objectively right or wrong. And that's not to say that the law shouldn't change. Obviously, it should change over time and for the better, America.
Hint, hint.
A little bit of influence there from a topic polar bear.
I like it.
Yeah. So there's that. And then when I was in academics, I loved it. I got into my master's program, was working with two academics that I just adored. And I also sat as a graduate student liaison on a number of faculty committees. And I remember coming home from a faculty committee meeting and going, I don't think this is life for me. And I sat down and talked to my dad, whom I adore, and who has always given me the best life advice. And he said, well, you know, why don't you think about what you want the shape of your day to be like? Like, forget about the job title. Look for the things you love, and then find a job that fits that. And so the things that I came up with were, and I'd worked with my dad, who's a dentist. I'd seen lots of goo. I did not want to be in the health sciences of any way, shape, or form.
It's like my worst nightmare. Oh.
But I loved being around people. I liked helping people. I liked being able to perform. And I really loved the intellectual effort involved in academics. So law really ticked all those boxes. And so that was what pushed me to go to law school. That and the desire to avoid indexing a book ever. Because when you're a grad student, you can end up doing, and that was back in, you know, the dinosaur era where you would physically have to sit down and do your index. So yeah, that's kind of how I got there.
I love it. We do need to take one more break. So why don't we do that? And when we come back, I would love for you to talk to us a bit about, like, if there was a moment in your life or an experience in your life that changed your trajectory in a way that that was meaningful for you. So let's take a quick break before we get to that, and we'll be right back, everyone.
Hey there, Pod family. Have you ever wished you could stay in the loop with a little slice of transformation and inspiration delivered straight to your inbox? Well, you're in luck, because now you can. Introducing our fantastic newsletter, your VIP pass to all things exciting and informative. Join our community of growth-minded souls. Get the hottest topics delivered right to your inbox. It's quick, easy, and totally free. Just head over to our website at goboldlyinitiative.com and sign up for our newsletter today. Don't miss out on the next big thing. Stay connected with us. Subscribe now and get ready for some big, bold love.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Before the break, we were hearing from Chelsea about sort of her journey into becoming a lawyer, and sort of how she got there and what that looked like. Chelsea, I was talking a little bit about this, and what I'd really like to understand, I guess, and what I want our listeners to understand is how did you come to the point where you can make decisions in the way that you do? Because it sounds amazing and I objectively understand it. But putting it into practice is hard. And so what I would like for you to talk to us about is, was there a moment where you were like, you know what, I need to stop being so reactive, or I need to, like, put aside my emotions and have these sort of logical discussions with people? Or is that just who you are, and, like, there wasn't something that happened along the way to point you in that direction? I'm just hoping something happened.
Yeah,
that I can recreate it.
I'm sort of thinking back to there are two things that stand out. My first marriage was to an individual who I think had some real undiagnosed neurodivergence. And I found that I could not deal with him the same way that I could deal with many of the people in my life that I had loved, my family, former boyfriends, friends. And after I split from him, because I found a number of things intolerable, I went through a ton of therapy, and I highly recommend therapy, people. It is the massage for your brain.
Yes.
It is fantastic.
Oh, I'm going to borrow that. I love that. Massage for
it's
your
a great
brain.
description.
Put it on a t-shirt, send me a bottle of Elsewhere. And I remember a therapist saying to me, the interesting thing about you, Chelsea, is you assume that everyone is working from the same motivations that you have. In your family, you negotiate in extreme good faith on the basis that everyone will get what they need, even if it's not particularly what they want, and that people are going to reciprocate in the same way that you reciprocate with members of your own family. And that is simply not how the world works. So that for me was a real moment where I recognized that my expectations were not realistic. And so that caused me to really step back and go, okay. I sure would like it if everybody worked like my family does. We seem pretty happy, but not everybody has that experience. So I think that experience of living within one family system and then marrying into a different family system and having to figure out how that worked, that was a real turning point for me.
Yeah, that's so then, since we're talking about your marriages, and it seems like you and your husband have sorted out your communication styles, right? And I know you have a number of, good working relationships with a number of other attorneys and lawyers. You're in Canada, so maybe you have fancier names than that.
And solicitors.
There you go, barristers and solicitors.
We do not wear wigs. We do wear robes. We do not drive polar bears or moose to the courthouse.
Well, that's disappointing.
I know, right?
And it's like, but we would if we could.
Right.
They're not predictable. They're like jacked deer on steroids. You do not want to be near them, although they're in person.
Anyway, I'm still excited about the robes part, because it's like, it's like, well, what do you wear to court? And you're like, I wear a robe.
It's wonderful. It is one of the most equalizing things that we have.
Yeah.
There are lawyers who don't like them. I adore them, because I don't have to think about what I'm going to wear. All I have to think about is my hair going to be back? Is it going to be in a bun, or is it going to be in a ponytail? That's it. And then I just go.
Yeah.
And you can wear a sports bra under your waistcoat, and you can wear the same shirt 2 days in a row, and it's just great. It's just great.
It's phenomenal. So that wasn't my question, but I'm really glad that we got some insight into that.
Yeah.
So, but I know that you have a number of good partnerships where you have cultivated really good communication styles with them. When you have come across where you're like, okay, I know in front of me as a person that I genuinely can have a good communication relationship with, but we aren't there. How do you get there? Like, what are the processes that you take to figure out how to get from, either figuring, like, how, I guess I'm wondering, how direct are you with them when you're trying to figure out like their communication style, so that you can get to that point where that you need to send your husband an email with a text that says, this can wait to the end of day, because that is like next level acknowledgement of communication style. And I assume that took a while to figure that out.
This is such a good question, Tova.
We had some spectacular fights. And I think so. And I just heard Kevin, my brother in arms, who I work with all the time, knock on my door. But
that's who I was thinking of, by the way. In my head was who I was thinking of.
So we're working on a number of quite high intensity cases. And yesterday I turned to Kevin, and he's one of the most fantastic. I had to say to him, I can only do 3 things at a time. I can't do 4 things at a time, only 3, so because, and the thing that I think works for me is I need to find people who understand that I will build up credit with you. I will put myself out for you. But I need to know that if I turn to you and say, hey man, I need to call in that card, they're going to be there for me. So for me, the basis of that is trust. And that's a very hard thing to develop. And I think it only develops over time. The reason I'm able to deal with my husband the way that I do is because I do have a genuine belief and years of experiences with him backing me up to show that he has my best interests at heart. So, and I've been burned. I've been burned by people, and I am much more cautious than I was in my 30s, with trusting people with my heart, and trusting people will reciprocate what I am willing to give to them. So how direct I am depends on how much credit I have built up with somebody. Like with Kevin, I can look at him and say, look, today is just crap, and I got zero bandwidth, and these are the things I can do, you know, and he will say to me, okay. Or he'll say, yeah, that really sucks. We're going to have to do this extra thing, and this is what we'll do to get through it. You know, sometimes I will look at my husband and I'll say, today, we're just going to have to gut it out. Let's take the please and thank you as read and just get through this. But I think it's that process of understanding the rules of the relationship before you start, and whether they're acceptable to you or not. And then the other thing that I would say is that I will start always with, hey, this is what's going on with me. You know, can we talk about that? And if you come to people and you say, look, I'm genuinely having difficulty with this, if that person doesn't respond with, well, is there something I can do to make it better? Well, that's a really valuable piece of information. So that's where I would start from.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because you've said that twice now. You said, like, this is what's going on with me, or even saying the concern I'm having, because it puts it on yourself. And it reminds me, it's been quite a few episodes since we've mentioned Brene Brown. So now seems like a good time as any. But she talks about, in conversations she's had with her husband, where she'll say, the story I'm telling myself. Right. Because it's like sometimes in our heads, we fabricate this whole thing. Like, the reason you aren't doing this is because you know, an extreme example, like, you don't care about me anymore. Like, you don't care that I do this anymore.
Right.
And, you know, and so I do think that's really important in negotiating as well, to just be like, this is why this is important to me. This is, you know, this is where we're coming from here. And I think, you know, like you said, it can be disarming. It can help so that other people aren't necessarily feeling like you're attacking them. As you just said, it also gives you insight into who you're talking to, because if they aren't then saying, well, how can we help you? You get a feel for what kind of person's on the other side of the table.
Right.
I think there's an expectation that, and again, huge generalization, there's a huge expectation that women and moms will just endlessly care for the people around them with no regard to their own interests. And that's not reasonable, realistic, or kind to ourselves. And so I think that's why I've sort of adopted that, being more guarded. Like, I will extend myself, but then I'll check in. And if I'm not getting the same, okay, it's time for me to pull back. Yeah. And that's good. That's self-preservation.
Yeah.
If you're not there for me, I'm just going to be pouring myself out onto this situation with no possibility of rest or reciprocation in the future. And that's not good for me. It's not good for my family. It's not good for me personally. It's not good for me professionally.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's beyond time for certainly women and moms to like recognize that you can fill your own cup without any need to then empty it out into anyone else. You could just fill up your cup. I know you're on a time constraint, so I'm going to wrap us up a little bit, and
all day.
We're going to have you on again, because we could clearly talk to you, and there's so many more questions about negotiation and in your personal life, your public life, whatever. But I think you've shared some incredible advice and information for people, so we really appreciate that. Tova, do you want to take over and do our quick response questions real quick?
We have real quick. We have 5 quick response questions. So they do not allow for any follow-up. So we just kind of like, what's on top of your head kind of questions. All right. Okay. So the first one is, what do you do when you first get up in the morning?
I let my dogs out of their crate.
What is your favorite movie?
Moonstruck.
such a good movie.
What is in your purse?
47 different lip glosses, a couple of crumpled up checkbooks. Oh, a pair of yoga tights, a bra, a llama handbook, and just give me 1 second and I'll show you. Also, my favorite little makeup bag. This is reversed. It says litigation.
So
A
cute.
litigation makeup bag. My wallet and a zillion little crapply pieces of paper.
Who was your teen heartthrob or crush?
Val Kilmer. Absolutely Val Kilmer.
Love
That's
it.
amazing. I know we're not supposed to comment, but I feel like he and your cheekbones could get married.
I loved him. If you can go back and watch the movie Top Secret, I know that there are some problematic moments in it, but honestly, Val Kilmer in Top Secret. Also, I know that everybody loved Tom Cruise in Top Gun, but Iceman.
Iceman all the way.
Okay, that's gonna be a whole episode right there.
Yeah.
But, and lastly, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received. Live your life the way that you want. Don't be in reaction to other people all the time. No matter what other people do, you act the way that speaks to your heart.
That is fantastic advice. Something we talk about a lot, to be honest. When we talk about our personal mission statement course, we talk about like living your values and focusing on who you are at your core. And so we can certainly appreciate and relate to that advice. We're gonna wrap up so you can get to court and do your thing. Thank you so much for being on the show. We love talking to you. We're probably gonna have you back. If people want to find you, is there a website or social media where they can connect with you?
You can just search my name, Chelsea Caldwell, lawyer, Vancouver will get you there. My website is www.chelseacaldwell.ca for Canada.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well,
I do have an open Instagram, but that's mostly my dogs. Anyway.
Love it.
Boy, I'd love to do this again.
Awesome. Thank you, Chelsea.
Yes, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for listening. We will be back next week with another how-to episode to help you live your version of a limitless life. So stay tuned, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.